Kali Uchis is somehow back again. It's been less than a year, very not long ago at all since her last album, but she is here once again, doing another album in her native language. She seems to flip-flop with this, doing one album in English, then another in her native language, and then kind of going back and forth, which is pretty cool. I will say the last time we got one of these from her, wasn't too keen on it. It did bring out one of her biggest songs ever though, with Telepatia, which was a pretty decent track, but yeah, I wasn't quite as wowed by that album as I was with her first album, Isolation. And I've got to say, she has become a victim of her own success with that album, where it's just like, are you ever going to top it? Like, it just seems so unlikely at this point that she's ever going to reach the heights of that album, because that was so bloody good. Like, some of those tracks have aged ridiculously well. Like, they're sounding better than ever. Your Teeth in My Neck, Dead to Me, Just a Stranger. Freaking hell, man. So many good songs. Like, they sound better today than they did when it first came out. It's a really good album. And I've got to say, this new album from her, where I'm not going to say the title, and I'm not going to say many titles, I don't think, because I'm just going to botch all the names, is the closest she's ever gotten to reaching that first album, I think. I think this is her second best album. There, I said it. There, I said it. There, it's her second best. There, I think it is her second best. I think this is a really, really strong outing from her. And yeah, I'm super impressed with what she delivered on this album, particularly the first half of this album. I've got to tell you, man, the first half of this album, man. Oh, we will get onto the second half of the album a little bit later and talk about why I think it's slightly weaker. But honestly, the run of tracks at the beginning is stellar. Some of her best songs to date, I think. Cómo, the breakbeats, the kind of like subtle undertones of the breakbeats, while it all feels like a bit dreamy, it all feels like a bit sleepy and nocturnal. And it's a really nice soft track, but also that kind of breakbeat production in the background just sits there ever so nicely, adding a nice little edge to the track. Really good stuff. It just works in such a calming manner for her, and her voice on this track sounds absolutely lovely. Then Pongo, Loca, the vocals. Oof, they are gliding angelically on this track. They sound so good. It's such a swift moving track, so soft and delicate, but her voice is just to die for. She's always had an amazing voice, don't get me wrong, and I think actually in the grander scheme of modern singers, she's a bit underrated, to be honest. Like, she's not really mentioned in that conversation, but she probably is in like the top 25 best singers of the past 10 years, to be honest. Her voice is ridiculously good. She hits notes so perfectly every time, but just every now and then when you get these tracks, more delicate tracks, and her voice is like the shining moment of the track, and it really highlights how good she is, it does take you aback a little bit. But got to talk about Igual, que un Ángel. I'm going to keep looking down to read these titles so I don't mess them up. This is the one, isn't it? This is going to be the TikTok smash. I mean, if there's one song that's a shoe-in already for an early TikTok 2024 smash, that's going to go mega viral, it's got to be this. I mean, Peso Pluma on the track too, who's been going mega viral with his stuff recently. They combine so well. Like, it literally sounds perfect for just becoming a viral song. It's a really good track too. This might be my favourite track, which is rare when this kind of thing happens, where like the obvious big hit is the obvious best song. But it might just be. They combine so well. The vocals are ridiculously good. The instrumentation is pretty simple, but it sounds really lush and nice. Like, you can't deny it. And that hook is so catchy too. Yeah, I can't see anything but massive success for this song. As you move along with this album, you do notice that the melodies become more prominent and the beats become a bit more noticeable, particularly on a track like Diosa, where it actually is more subtle, but you can feel it slightly creeping in a little bit, and it does sound really good. And I also want to mention Te Mata as well, which again has a bit more of a stronger melody, but it really feels very traditional and kind of in that regional Mexican music sound that's just so earthly and so traditional sounding that it actually reminds me a lot of something Natalia Lafourcade would do, which is a great comparison for Kali Uchis. Not something I would have ever expected, but yeah, like I say, this leg of the album, all these tracks up until this point are so good. I was ready to be calling this like one of the best of the year, and to be fair, it could easily still be that. For me, it's when you hit Young, Rich and In Love where I'm just a little bit like, okay, there's a slight decline. And the decline continues a little bit, to be honest. I do think this section of the album has some of the weakest tracks, just for the simple fact that this track just isn't particularly that enjoyable. I don't think the melodies are that great. I don't think the Riding You chorus that she keeps repeating is particularly that flattering. I just think everything up until this point has been so classy and so lush sounding, and then you get to this track and it's just a bit on the nose. It's just a bit like gawky. Like, I'm just kind of like, oh, that chorus doesn't quite hit, doesn't quite land in the way that the other tracks have. There's a run of reggaeton tracks on this album, which this isn't going to be an attack on the genre itself. I think there's some good stuff there, but I just personally think her approach to reggaeton is a little gimmicky, actually, and I don't think she sells it half as well as those really lush and soulful tracks that we got before it. And it just makes the album kind of have like a split, like where it's like the first half is like the softer tracks and the second half is the bangers, and it's just a bit like, okay, cool, but I was okay with all the softer tracks. But it's when you get tracks like Muñequita where it's like, I don't know about this one. Like, it really sounds like she's forcing herself to do this because it's such a huge audience to tap into, and it will probably do well for her, so who am I to say that this isn't good? But yeah, I think the Rosalia type beat feels a bit forced. I like Rosalia a lot, but I just think this beat sounds a lot like her, and it just feels a bit shoehorned in on the album. And then the feature doing that chicky chaka chaka thing, I was just a bit like, what is this? This is the laziest thing ever. And if you're going to bring on a feature to do something, give them a bit more than that. Tracks that follow it are okay. Like, it doesn't get quite as ever bad as Muñequita. I do think that's the obvious worst track on this album. But yeah, like I say, I was just really locked in that atmosphere and that really soft, delicate feeling that most of the album was giving me. And I just think you get to this point, it just feels like it's rushing into the bangers. We need something to be a hit. And I just feel like these tracks are a little weak, to be honest with you. But Heladito is where the album picks up again towards the end, with the really classy noir feel. It feels like some like 1940s like singer at a smoky bar, and it's black and white, you know, that kind of feel. This track really gives off that. And in fairness to what I was just saying about those more upbeat bangers, the final track is probably one of the best upbeat bangers on the whole thing. I mean, that transition into the second half just has your arms flailing. It's just like, yeah. That is a great moment on the album, to be fair. Really out of nowhere. And yeah, I do enjoy that. What a party of a song it is. Feels so random, feels chaotic, but it is a really good end to the album. So yeah, overall, I'm really impressed with this one. Like I say, I don't think it's too far away from what I felt with Isolation. Maybe the songs in certain places on this album aren't quite as memorable, just because I guess they're offering something a little different. They're not, you know, pop tracks in the same way, although there are some, but I do think like some of the more delicate, softer tracks aren't giving you that same feeling. That's not to say they're not as good though, because like I say, I think those are some of the strongest tracks she's ever done. So yeah, I think if it carried on from how it sounded from those first maybe 5 or 6 songs, I would have probably been talking like an 8 or an 8.5, but for me personally, I think it drops from that to a 7.5. But even still, really good album. Maybe those tracks will grow on me over time as well. You never know, this can happen with albums, particularly when I give 7.5s out. By the end of the year, I think, oh, actually, you know what, I've kind of grown to like this more. But even still, it's very good stuff, regardless of the score. Thank you for watching. As always, please let me know in the comments what you think of this album. If you agree with me, disagree, comment below, subscribe, check out my Patreon as well. Have a good day. Hope you enjoyed this album, and goodbye.